the hidden story in this is not so much of what is sitting at the Port of Baltimore. That port will open up, that traffic and that freight will get out. But what we're looking at right now, what we've been planning from a contingency standpoint for our clients since about 3 o'clock this morning is how this is going to affect the Eastern Seaboard. So the Port of Baltimore is effectively not going to be able to accept containerized freight. That freight will now be discharged throughout the southeast of the United States, so along the East Coast and up into New York and New Jersey. And because that freight is now showing up in places that a lot of shippers and BCOs were not prepared for, it's going to strain not just the inland transportation of those goods, but it's also going to strain the capacity that the shippers have already arranged to get that freight in. So the next 5 to 7 days are going to be the most critical, because if that freight that shows up unannounced or unplanned doesn't get off those ports, it could can metastasize and shut down or at least complicate operations at these other Eastern Seaboard ports.
Of course, and you've got to logistically work out the workforce and everything else in order to meet those challenges at the same time. But just back on the bridge just for 1 second, and I sort of alluded to it, but there's a lot of discussion regarding the importance of that bridge specifically, particularly when it comes to, its hazmat clearance and the ability for using that bridge to have the trucks go over instead of using a tunnel, and the importance it has for chemicals and everything else that come through the Port of Baltimore. Is it going to be that much of an issue, though? Like, in terms of from what you understand from a logistics standpoint, is this going to be catastrophic for those businesses that are going to have to go elsewhere and then find some way to ship whatever they were pushing into Baltimore to another place? Or do you foresee that it's just going to be a marginal impact, that there's going to be workarounds that are going to be able to be achieved, even if it's rebuilding the bridge, for example?
Yeah, so I would say that the Port of Baltimore is effectively closed for at least the next 3 months. So all of those that use that as an in-gate to North America are going to be severely impacted. For those that export out, and coal is a huge export out of that market, these industries are going to be severely adversely affected. So the trucking piece immediately today, yes, that is going to be affected. But long term, and when I say long term, I'm talking about the next 7 days, 3 months. That port is going to be shut down. So everyone that used to frequent that port, and every shipper in BCO is now going to have to utilize New York, New Jersey, or Charleston, or Norfolk, Virginia, which are hundreds, thousands of miles away from where this freight was supposed to be, are going to have to dig down deep and put in contingency plans that we haven't seen since post-COVID congestion. And I would say that this will adversely affect the East Coast in ways that we haven't seen since the tariff increases and congestion that we saw in 2018. So it is a big deal, and it's something that, personally, I've been dealing with for going on, I think, hour 24 now. And our company's going to have to advise our clients and those in this ecosystem for the foreseeable future.
Can I just ask you, and it's almost harking onto what you were alluding to earlier and what you just said about, the Port of Baltimore. If it's 3 months, that it's shut down for, and if you're absolutely correct regarding that, if that proves out to be true, that 3-month target, not just in terms of the congestion that could potentially cause, but do you foresee, how much of an impact does that have globally across the supply chains as well? Because I would imagine, does the things that come into Baltimore get priority over others that might have slots coming into those other ports? How does all of that work?
Yeah, so it won't. And a lot of people that import into the United States aren't even aware of these impacts. So they'll find out, 4 or 5 days later that their freight is now being consigned or repositioned to a port that it was intended to be at 1,000 miles away, and they're going to scramble. And this is our biggest concern right now: is that if you have, and we're talking about effectively 300,000 containers a quarter. If you have this freight start showing up at ports in Charleston and New York, New Jersey, and Norfolk, then that freight, if people are on top of things, it's not going to get taken off the dock. And that will create congestion and metastasize and get us to a place where these ports get to a place where they can't effectively operate. And that's, a large concern. But another concern from an inflationary standpoint is that this is going to increase transportation costs. This is going to increase, the end cost to a user, especially in the U.S., as we've been fighting inflation for a while. And this could be something that might be a headwind as we're going into Q3 and Q4 of this year. So it is a big deal, and it is something that, we all have to kind of come together as shippers and transportation providers and make sure that we're staying ahead of this and working together to get this freight off the docks. We don't run into situations that we've seen previously in COVID and those tariff of 2018.